Now we're going to talk about output. Now, so far, the general idea that you've got is something like this. You've got some function, and then to output, you just use the print statement. Now, the problem with this is that when you break down programming properly, you come to realize that if you have a function which does this, right? Let's say that it's to calculate the sum of three numbers, and you pass it three numbers, A, B, and C. Okay. In your code, you type in result equals A plus B plus C, and then you print that result. Okay. Let's start with that very, very simple example based on what we have so far. So we have a simple function which is just going to be called add. You've got three values. Again, notice just how useless the name is. It's a very crucial point I'm making. I know I sound like I'm insulting myself, but A doesn't tell you what type of data it is, B or C. Okay, so bear that in mind. That's actually a weakness of that program. But let's just say that the add function simply takes each of these, and I'm choosing a simple example to make a point about the concept. And then I print it inside here, right? And so after I say hello, goodbye, I will run my add function and give it the numbers 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there we go. There's my new program. It has two output statements, then it follows with an add statement and should output because there is the output statement. Okay, so let's run that and just have a look at it and discuss why something isn't quite so right about it, right? I run main, and remember main is the best. There we go. So it's simply giving you the result of those three numbers. But actually, if you think back to what I said, a function should be defined. If this function is called add, why is it also including output? And technically, you might have a function which also has input. Now, what you need to start learning about using functions properly is that if we take our add and we pass it the three values, what you need to do is you don't want your output statement inside the add, because logically the add simply adds the numbers and gives back the result. It doesn't output them. So you've got to shake a habit and break a habit, and we'll do a simple example in a moment to help you grasp what we're saying. But this brings into our model. So there's our function, there's your input, there's your out. When you're out using your output, you're not using a print statement, you're actually using the keyword return. And what that does, if I do this, if I return the sum of those three numbers, what that actually means is that function takes in the three numbers, and the process it's interested in is adding them together and giving that back to whoever asked me to do that job. Now that is a properly defined function, albeit the names are very awful. So let's code it and see how it would change. So critically, we don't print inside it because the purpose of the add function is not to print, it is to return the result. So look at the keyword return. So now your question is, hang on, so all that's doing is adding them, but it's returning them. What do you do with the return? I've got to output it. I've got to pop it up on screen somewhere, right? Let's get these temporarily out of the way. What you would do is you could two strategies. The first is to use the assignment operator, and you might want to do that line where you execute that line of code. The purpose only of that function is to add the results and return them, and then it pops it into a value down here. Let's just call it value, just to separate it out, because I'm using the term res all over the place. Okay, that's one possibility. Then I can print value, right? Oops, bear with me a second. I've just mistyped on my own code. So I can print the value. So why even use print? I mean, over here I've got my own print function called out. So why don't I just do that? So here, this function receives three numbers, returns the result, and I output that. Now that's starting to look more like a program, and it's looking more like the kind of thing you want to start teaching yourself to do. to breaking things down into their logical parts. There we go, there's the output. You can always do this. You can say sum is, put a speech mark in. Of course, you can use your formatting statements, but I'm not going to in this for the time being, but you would probably use format so you get it all displayed correctly. So let's just run this again. And that's going to crash because I put a 0 in there. And it's going to crash because it says out takes exactly one argument. Oh, I see. I've given it 2. Do you see? I've given it 2. So let's replace that. It said it should only have one argument. That's my out function. It only receives one piece of information. The comma suggests I've got 2 pieces of information. So I've got a little bit unhappy with that. It's still unhappy because this is where life gets a little bit more complicated. That plus sign glues together these 2 different types of data. And now, if you remember, technically I should convert that to a string or use a format function. I'm trying to do this quickly to not get distracted by it, but observe the errors as I do them, and you will save yourself from the problem. Right, it's not happy with that, so for the time being, I'm going to drop that out because that's not relevant to this concept here. You would have to use proper format statements and so on to make this work. But here's the point. The return is the logical way to use functions when they do something like add numbers. So you have a distance between 2 points function, okay? So you have, in previous exercises, you've had to write a distance between 2 points, okay? And the way that you've done it is you've either passed it 4 values, x1, y1, x2, y2, and then you've calculated it and printed it. But here you just have to return the result of the calculation, and you'd put all your values in the right place inside there. It doesn't have to be a single line, but the advantage of this type of function is if you test it once and it works, means that you can reuse this in lots of different ways. You can create your own library of functions, and we'll come back to that idea as a way of you stretching out your thinking and ideas here. Matthew provides a lot more different examples inside his notes